The clock starts now. In war, a minute can feel like an hour, but in the Ia Drang Valley, there was 1 minute that felt like the end of the world. 60 seconds where the line between survival and annihilation nearly vanished. 60 seconds where a single battalion of American soldiers stood on the edge of being overrun. 60 seconds that changed the course of the Vietnam War. This is the story of the deadliest minute in the Battle of Ia Drang. A moment when time slowed and every second mattered. The Valley of Death. The Ia Drang Valley sits in the central highlands of Vietnam, remote, rugged, unforgiving. To the men of the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry, it was a place they had never heard of. But to the North Vietnamese Army, it was home turf, a sanctuary, a stronghold. On November 14, 1965, American helicopters touched down at a clearing known as Landing Zone X-Ray. The mission was simple: find the enemy and bring the fight to them. But the enemy was already waiting. The quiet before the storm. At first, the landing seemed routine. Dust, rotor wash, shouts of "Go! Go! Go!" But the jungle surrounding X-Ray was thick, silent, and watching. The men spread out, formed a perimeter, took positions in the tall grass. They didn't know it yet, but they had landed in the middle of a hornet's nest. Thousands of North Vietnamese soldiers were hidden in the hills and ravines around them, and they were moving in. The first contact. The first shots came from the trees, sharp, sudden, close. A patrol made contact with a large enemy force, then another, then another. Within minutes, the entire perimeter was under pressure. The North Vietnamese weren't probing. They were attacking. Hard. Radio calls crackled with urgency. Positions shifted. Lines tightened. The men of 17 Cav dug in, knowing the storm was coming. The buildup to the deadliest minute. By midday, the battlefield had transformed. Smoke drifted through the trees. The air shook with gunfire. The ground trembled under mortar blasts. American positions were stretched thin. Some squads were isolated, others were fighting hand to hand. And then, the North Vietnamese commanders made a decision. They would break the American line with a single overwhelming charge. A wave of soldiers, rushing forward at once, aiming to collapse the perimeter in one decisive blow. This was the moment everything had been building toward. The moment when the valley held its breath. The deadliest 60 seconds begins. It started with silence, a strange, unnatural quiet, as if the jungle itself was waiting. Then, a roar. Hundreds of North Vietnamese soldiers surged from the tree line, shouting, charging, firing as they ran. The American line braced for impact. Men shouted warnings. Machine guns opened up. M16s barked in rapid bursts, but the enemy kept coming. Closer, faster, relentless. In those first 10 seconds, the line nearly broke. In 20 seconds, the fighting was so close that rifles became useless. Men fired pistols, threw grenades, and fought for every inch of ground. In 30 seconds, the perimeter sagged under the weight of the attack. If the line collapsed, the battalion would be overrun. In 40 seconds, radio calls turned desperate. Positions were falling back. A gap was opening. In 50 seconds, the enemy was inside the wire, close enough to touch, close enough to see the fear in each other's eyes. And then, in the final 10 seconds, the tide turned. The turning point. A single American machine gun team held their ground. Their position was nearly overrun, but they kept firing. Short, controlled bursts, cutting into the wave of attackers. Nearby riflemen rallied. Grenades arced through the air. The line stiffened, held, pushed back. The North Vietnamese assault faltered. Momentum shifted. The wave broke. And just like that, the deadliest 60 seconds of the battle were over. But the cost was staggering. The command view. From the command post, the scene was chaos. Radio traffic overlapped. Reports came in faster than they could be processed. Some positions were gone, others were barely holding. Commanders knew the truth. If that 1 minute had gone differently, if the line had collapsed, the entire battalion could have been wiped out. Reinforcements were called. Air support was requested. Artillery was redirected. The battle was far from over, but the worst moment had passed. The aftermath. When the smoke cleared, the ground around X-Ray was scarred and silent. Bodies lay in the grass. Spent casings glittered in the dirt. The smell of gunpowder hung in the air. The men of 1-7 Cav had survived the deadliest minute of the battle. But the cost weighed heavily. They had held the line, but they had seen how close they came to losing everything. Why that minute mattered. The Battle of Ia Drang became the first major clash between American forces and the North Vietnamese Army. It revealed the enemy's tactics, their discipline, their willingness to charge head-on into fire. It also revealed the limits of American firepower and the brutal reality of jungle warfare. That single minute at X-Ray showed both sides what the war would become: close, chaotic, relentless, costly. A war where victory wasn't measured in miles gained, but in moments survived. The minute that echoed through history. In the Ia Drang Valley, time didn't move in hours or days. It moved in seconds. And for 1 minute, 60 seconds of chaos and courage, the fate of an entire battalion hung in the balance. The men who stood their ground at X-Ray didn't just survive a battle. They survived one of the most intense moments in the history of the Vietnam War. A moment that still echoes through memory, through history, and through the stories of those who lived it. This was the deadliest 60 seconds in the Vietnam War. Please like and subscribe for more Vietnam War stories.